Welcome to the Startup Leader Show, where we learn lessons from startup founders and executives. I am your host, Lisa Dreher, and I'm really excited to introduce our guest for today, Michelle Del Valle. She is founder and CEO at FinSat Space. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's very, very exciting to be a part of your show. It's just absolutely wonderful. And it's really, really great that you put the spotlight on founders and CEOs to really get a temperature check of industry. So first and foremost, thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. Maybe we can start by having you give just a little bit of background on yourself and FinSat Space.
Yeah, absolutely. So a real quick tidbit about myself. I spent, basically my whole life doing life sciences. I ended up in New York in big pharma, where I focused on being a process development engineer for scaling up antibodies. And I did a lot of work there. And I also dabbled in the space industry. I ran a space conference, and I just got really, really excited when I started getting interested in sustainability and how space really relates to that, and how we can really close the wealth gap by doing something that we're doing at FinSat. So I think this is a good transitioning point into FinSat and some of the work that we're doing. So specifically, FinSat is focused on building sustainable cities across the globe using space data. So specifically, we use geospatial and satellite and remote sensing data to really drive our mathematical models to extract patterns in cities so that you can properly allocate resources and build better foundations for multiple generations to come. That's really the exciting part about FinSat, and there's a lot you can do with big data, as we all know, and that's what we're focused on.
Wow, that's amazing. So when you talk about sustainability, there's a lot of different definitions. So sometimes people are talking about environmental impacts.
Mhm.
Sometimes people are talking about just long-term futures. Tell us a little bit more about the sustainability aspect that FinSat is really focused on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're specifically focused on smart cities. That's our niche. And what makes a city smart is, well, you have to understand what the cultural needs are in the city from an economic point of view. So we focus on property valuation and how your properties can be impacted by weather patterns, climate risk, and other risk in terms of if we have scarcity of resources in certain places as climate change continues, we really need to be better prepared in terms of our infrastructure. And so our clients are specifically high finance, governments, and we really focus on public-private partnerships.
Great, great, great. So you guys have just launched, I think, recently, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I want you to talk a little bit about, obviously you've been working on the development of this. I know there's an application that you've developed to kind of bring all of these data points together. So what have you seen as your biggest keys to your launch success so far?
Yeah, I think just identifying a problem in the marketplace, and that was a really key start. So I did some user research back in at United Nations General Assembly in New York last September, and just passed around the idea to different investors. And I said, hey, well, what would you do if you could be an impact investor? If you were buying certain property and you could know the risk from an insurance point of view, also the risk in terms of a tax point of view from climate change, would that be a benefit to you? And everybody was very, very excited. And I took it a step further to say, but what if we could just build the economy and provide urban growth for generations to come just by properly placing resources. So the keys to success, I think, from the get-go and jump have been identifying a problem, actively listening to feedback, and really letting that shape the direction. So, we've really honed in on smart cities, and that's really because we've actively asked a lot of questions to folks. Another thing is we ask for help. That's really helpful. And the way that we approach things is we really like to manage by measuring. So, I mean, we are data driven from the inside and externally. And I think that that really helps us get an edge from the early start. And we just put ourselves out there. So,
Right, right, right. Wow, that sounds like an amazing way to get input from the community that, or the broader group that you're really looking to serve. So when you think about how things have gone so far and just the development of the business so far, what have been some of the most valuable business lessons that you've learned?
yeah, I would say that, I did write a note here from something I learned when I was younger with school projects. And I think that it stems from that because that's really what has grown me in type of the servant leader that I am today. Versus like, when I was young, you kind of, I understood what founder syndrome was at a young age. I loved projects. I've always loved leading. And I think that understanding that if it's your way and you want it, you have a vision and you really really want to shape that vision in the direction that you see in your mind. If you ice out all of that feedback around you, you really isolate yourself. And so you, in a funny way, you might as well start singing the Rascal Flatts song. What is it? The Lonely Road or something like that. Because, you're on a highway to nowhere and by yourself. So I think that letting things shape out from your team's perspective, also taking a backseat and just listening to folks that have better expertise than you. I mean, you always want to hire better than, what you know. So that's really what we've done. I mean, my team right now, fantastic. They're super clever. We got into alpha. We're in alpha testing right now, which is super, super cool. We'll be in beta in March. So, I mean, they're just so clever. I mean, I was able to be in Europe for a couple weeks doing a lot of business development, and that's because I have an awesome team. So really just that is, it's not about you, it's about your team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When you think about kind of as you started, obviously you've been in development for a while, if you're, now that you've launched and everything, if there's anything when you think back that you would do any differently.
Oh yeah, I have this one. I did this with. So I had a startup before this. I did a nonprofit startup. I didn't mention that, but and this go around, and I had mistakes there too. Lessons learned. This go around, right after Unga, I got heavy into the science side. I mean, that's just my background. I love science. And so I worked with a PhD theoretician, and we just dove deep into algorithmic design and research. And I'm talking from 2 p.m. when he got off. He was a fellow, and to midnight or 2 a.m. And we just whiteboard the entire time. And this was for over a month. And I just said, oh my gosh, okay, we have a lot of research, really, really fantastic, but we have no product. So I would say that, build and test, then listen to your market, and then rinse and repeat. That was a huge lesson learned. And that's what the difference is in academia and bringing something to market. There's some synergy to be done between the two, but it's really hard to do. You kind of have to pick and choose at early stage startups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Getting to that minimum viable product and all of that, getting something into the market, like you said, so that you have it in people's hands and they can start giving you feedback. Absolutely. Sounds like a great way to go. So, another thing that tends to happen when you're starting something is that you just run into these roadblocks along the way. What have you found are the best ways to like work through those roadblocks?
Mm. Oh, this is interesting. I had a walk and talk chat with a good friend of mine at Amazon this weekend about that. Sometimes when you're working so hard and, my team and I, we call it the grind, and you're hustling, 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 going from either like you're just in pure doer mode. And I think it's really easy to get blocked. And even when you're not blocked, it's just hard to see clearly. And really, even though you can measure, there's a point of like creativity that you got to just take a step back. You got to
Mhm.
chill out. You got to enjoy life. You got to go hang out with your friends. You got to go, call your mom. Just do these things that are important to you because that's what makes you you, and you're not a robot. So your creativity is really important. So to take a step back, do some of the things that make you happy aside from work. Even if you love work, I mean, I love work too, but it's the whole big picture. So that's what I do. I'm like, sometimes if running doesn't do it for me, then I know I'm like, y'all, I just, everybody, no text message, nothing about this, only funny memes today. Like, it's the weekend, of course.
Right, absolutely. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about the actual application and maybe dig into how that works a little bit or how it will work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think starting from a comparative. So our goal, first of all, our goal is to really aggregate data and use mathematical modeling to make predictions on a large scale for cities. But big data doesn't really make sense because big numbers don't make sense fully. Like, how do you visualize that? And that's what we're doing for cities. So if you imagine, you're familiar with Zillow.
Mhm.
And and for those of y'all that are not, it's a real estate B2C platform. So we kind of have that easy interface where it's like Zillow versus combined with Bloomberg. So you have all the graphs and analytics, and then Google Maps, all integrated into one. So you imagine all of those together, and you overlay different climate change factors and things like that. You really can see where the risk is visually, and
Mhm.
then you have all of the data in terms of graphs over time, and you just export that. It really shaves off a lot of time and can work in a lot of unit operations in different industries, all the way from urban planners to investors.
Wow, that's great. And you're pulling in GIS data, and then what type of remote sensing data are you pulling in?
Yeah, so some of the data that we're pulling in, we're focused on using really looking at soil moisture. That's one of the things that we can do, is we can study the moisture content in soil, and there's some like features that we are specifically working on to use that kind of data to get further granularity. A lot of our work has been focused on the imagery data at our first stage, but in terms of like later stages, and some of the things that we have now are geared towards that. Some of our AI stuff that's going to come out is more geared towards things that are in the market that make it a little bit easier for folks to be able to how do I say it, because we're not ready to like fully disclose everything. It's really good questions. Basically, if you're a user and you have a question and you want to be able to find a solution fast, that's our goal. We want to get the user as close to the answer and provide a white glove service. That's what we're doing. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. So if you were speaking with a founder that is just getting started and they're looking for advice, what piece of advice would you give them?
Yeah, so specifically, some of the advice that I would recommend is, I would say that I wrote some stuff. I would say find people that you really trust. Find a team that you trust, that knows their stuff. It's really hard to for people to take a risk in a startup, just from an investor point of view, from a teammate standpoint. So get people that buy in into the like long-term vision, that look at your plans, give you a lot of feedback, and are kind of there to grow with you. That's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you found that sometimes when you're getting advice that sometimes you'll get advice that is completely opposite? And how do you decide which path to take then?
Mm, I don't know. I like that. I guess I think that it's case by case. I would say
Yeah.
that for Mm, advice, I try not to be biased. I bring it to the team, if I don't know, really, and we kind of just talk it over. If but you ask more than 2 people, so you kind of just get more feedback, I guess is my best answer. Sometimes you don't have
Yeah.
time to do that all, and you're just like, okay, if I do this, then this happens, and you contingency plan around that. And sometimes your contingency plans are safer in one direction than the other, and taking a
Mhm.
conservative approach is always a better bet. It's tempting to go fast, but it's a little risky.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I want to end with one last question, and that is we always kind of like to look into the future. So if you can get out your crystal ball, what is one prediction that you would make about the future?
I would say that one prediction I would make about the future is that even though a lot of things seem we're in the age of information, and I think that it's pushing us beyond our beyond a connectivity that we've ever known before. And I'd say that in the future, people are going to give each other a little bit more grace to make mistakes, to say things that just to have, to learn and have more of a growth mindset. I think that we've seen that a lot. I know this is completely out of scope, but I think we've seen it a lot with cancel culture, and I just think that it's a shame. People are not. I'm not the same person fully that I was 5 years ago, and I think that we should start to just like realize that some things should definitely only be kept at home, but other things should you just give people grace, and then you just move on, and that's it.
Absolutely. I think that's really good advice. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate your time and learning more about FinSat Space. If somebody wanted to learn more about FinSat Space, what should they do?
Well, they definitely go to finsat.space. That's our URL, and then you can go and you can contact us. You're definitely welcome to contact us on LinkedIn as well, and you can go to our page and find that information, and just shoot us an email, ask us a question. We'll hop on a call with you. What we're looking for, we are right now looking for different advisors in different spaces, and we're also hiring and looking for team members, and so we can talk more about that. So if you're interested, then let's talk.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I do want to take a moment to thank GuideForce for hosting these sessions. To learn more about GuideForce, you can visit guideforce.com. And we'll see you next time on the next Startup Leaders Show.
Thank you.